Hi, welcome back. This is going to be a review session on the oxygen-carbon dioxide cycle. So let's take a little bit of a look at what we're going to be discussing. Well, here are some key words. Oxygen, carbon dioxide, outgassing, photosynthesis, respiration, ozone layer, greenhouse effect, radiation, global warming, depletion, and pollution. So here are the words we're going to be talking about in today's review. First thing we're going to talk about is the oxygen-carbon dioxide cycle itself. And you guessed it, a cycle is a pathway that takes a circular type of motion. There's no beginning and there's no end. So let's just start over here, just because. Carbon dioxide exists in our atmosphere. Plants take in carbon dioxide through a process known as photosynthesis. Photosynthesis releases oxygen. Oxygen is taken in by animals and humans through a process known as respiration. Respiration produces carbon dioxide, and then the cycle starts over once again. Now let's see where it all began. 4.4 billion years ago, the Earth was created. Now, the Earth was in a volatile state. That means a very dangerous state. Volcanoes were erupting everywhere. Earthquakes were happening. Things were basically insane. Now, volcanoes, when they would erupt, released a variety of gases. This process is known as outgassing. Now, some of these gases that were released were hydrogen gas, water vapor, ammonia, methane, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and nitrogen gas. But if you notice, there's a very important gas missing. You got it, oxygen gas. Volcanoes did not erupt and release oxygen gas. Actually, at this stage in the Earth's life, oxygen gas didn't even exist. But there were other things that could exist in this volatile environment. Let's take a look at what those other things are. Bacteria and single-celled organisms. I should have guessed. Bacteria doesn't need oxygen in order to survive. So these life forms were very capable of surviving in the early time of life on Earth. Now, eventually what happened was plants and certain complex forms of bacteria arose. Now, these life forms evolved cells that were capable of capturing energy from the sun, and they would convert it to sugar as a food source. This process is known as photosynthesis. Now, photosynthesis needs several different products or components in order to work. You need water, carbon dioxide, and sunlight. As long as you have those three components and a plant or organism that can perform photosynthesis, you will get byproducts or a result of sorts known as glucose, which is sugar, and oxygen gas. Now, that oxygen gas for a plant is a waste product. A waste product is something that the organism doesn't need, so it releases it into the atmosphere. And plants don't need oxygen to survive, but we do. So the arrival of oxygen into the atmosphere due to photosynthesis allowed for what's known as aerobic or oxygen-breathing organisms to evolve. That means humans, cows, fish, and every other organism that uses oxygen can survive. Now, the process of oxygen and carbon dioxide cycle is something that occurs on many different levels. You have the one that we saw earlier, the tree and the organism. You also have the carrying of carbon dioxide out of water and oxygen in. You have the plants to fish. You also have factories which produce high levels of carbon dioxide. And the plants which take in the carbon dioxide release oxygen so that the fires in the factories can work. So carbon dioxide and oxygen is a cycle that takes on many different forms. Now let's find out a little bit more about how oxygen and carbon dioxide can affect our lives. And one of the layers we talked about was the stratosphere. And what did we say was in the stratosphere? You got it, the ozone layer. Now let's find out a little bit about what ozone actually is. Ozone means 3 oxygen molecules. So let's find out how that actually happens. Well, you have 1 oxygen gas. Oxygen gas is 2 oxygen molecules hanging out together. So you have 1 oxygen molecule and another oxygen molecule. Now these 2 oxygen molecules hang out, they chill out together. Sometimes we breathe them in, but in the ozone layer we can't do that. So they just kind of hang out. And what happens is the sun sends rays to Earth. And these rays split the oxygen molecule apart. So instead of having 1 oxygen molecule with 2 atoms of oxygen, you have 2 completely separate oxygen atoms which are not connected. So you have the oxygen molecule, which is oxygen gas. The sun comes in and splits them apart. So now you have 2 single oxygen molecules. What eventually happens is the oxygen molecule itself doesn't like being by itself. It wants to be with something else. So it looks around for something else, and a lot of times what it finds is another oxygen gas molecule. Now remember, we said that oxygen gas was 2 oxygen atoms connected to each other. So this single oxygen that's hanging out by itself attaches to that oxygen gas, creating ozone. And that's how you get ozone. Now, us humans are really good at making things. And a chemical that we made, known as chlorofluorocarbons, was something that a long time ago was used on a regular basis. It was used in spray cans and a number of other different products. What we didn't know was chlorofluorocarbons actually depleted the ozone layer. It would lower the concentration of ozone molecules in the atmosphere. 1 single CFC molecule can react and destroy dozens of ozone molecules. Let's take a look at how this happens.